Now, we've looked at the reflex that is simple, and we've looked at a neural circuit that is simple, but we want to go all the way. We really want to drive this analysis into the ground, and for that, we want to make our task even simpler. We don't want to deal with 24 sensory neurons. We don't want to deal with 6 motor neurons, several serotonergic cells. We want to see whether we can reduce the complexity even more. We want to see whether we can take a radical reductionist approach to the study of learning and memory. So let's see if we can take a single sensory neuron, a single motor neuron, and a single serotonergic neuron and put it in a dish. And we can do that. Sensory neuron on top forms perfectly good connections with the motor neurons, and the serotonergic cells, the modular neurons, form connections onto them. And if you stimulate the modulatory neurons, you'll strengthen the connections between the sensory neuron and the motor neuron. But we don't even need the modulatory neurons. We know they release serotonin. So we can substitute a pipette that simply puffs on serotonin. We now have a learning circuit, a 2-neuron learning circuit in a dish, and we can now puff on serotonin. And we can see what happens. If we puff on serotonin once, we get a transient facilitation of synaptic strength. We're now looking at the amplitude of synaptic strength as a function of time. Lasts minutes. If we now give 5 puffs, brief puffs of serotonin, we get a facilitation that lasts more than 1 day. And now we can ask something very nice. We saw that long-term memory differs from short-term memory in requiring the synthesis of new proteins. Is this represented at the elementary level? Can you see this at the connection between the sensory neuron and the motor neuron? And we can obviously do this very simply. We can apply inhibitors of protein synthesis, and we find that it selectively blocks the long-term without in any way affecting the short-term process. So here we have a situation in which we reduce the learning process, a component of it, a critical component of it, to a monosynaptic connection consisting of literally 2 cells and a puff of pipette. And we can now try to analyze the molecular mechanisms that underlie it. So I'm going to show you a blow-up of the sensory neuron and the motor neuron and the serotonergic modulatory input.